Welcome to the Empower LEP Podcast. I'm your host, Jana Parker. I'm a group practice owner. I'm a licensed educational psychologist, and I am the owner and mentor at Empower LEP. I am hosting today Jessica Lascano, who I've had on the podcast before. She is the second person who is going to be doing her second episode with me. And she is just a powerhouse. Jessica has a practice in Southern California called Strive ABC, and they provide a lot of behavioral support for different school districts down there. And she is a BCBA. She just earned her doctorate. She is a wealth of knowledge in so many areas. We talk about dyslexia. We talk about manifestation determinations. We talk about behavior support. And it's just a really, really interesting conversation. I hate that I can talk to people when we're recording an episode, but I don't get to talk to people just kind of on a day-to-day basis that I feel like we'd have such rich conversation. So anyway, I really hope that you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Welcome back to the Empower LEP podcast. I have on my second time repeat guest, Jessica Lascano. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I am so excited to hear everything that you have had going on, because I feel like we probably met the last time in December 2023 is what that's when I think we met last time. And because you were one of our very first guests. And I want to say, like, so much has happened since then. So we're now at the beginning of October 2024. And I want to hear everything that has gone on with your company. Because I feel like we're both kind of in this exponential boom this year. So yeah, I want to hear all things.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. And it's kind of cool that I'm coming back here almost a year later because, then we have a different conversation. And, I never watched the podcast because I'm embarrassed to hear myself speak sometimes. So I was like, I cannot take an hour of that. I can't do it. So maybe what I'll do is after this goes up, I'll listen to both and then I'll be able to see for myself what the changes were. Yeah. So that'll be kind of cool.
I think it'll be so cool. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely. We've grown some. We have a couple of additional contracts. We let go of a contract. It's just navigating the needs. I definitely think that I'm becoming a bit more confident in terms of being a business owner and a leader. It's feeling a little bit less fake, right? And a little bit more tangible. Just as far as this is really my company. These are really the people I work with. These are really the contracts I have. It doesn't feel so surreal. I think last year it just sort of felt like, is this really happening? Am I going to sustain it? So now in year 2, I'm a bit more comfortable, I would say, in terms of accepting the role, right? Because it is a little bit hard to accept that role. Again, I'm not necessarily a shy person, but I have a little bit of embarrassment when it comes to certain things. And something like being a business owner, although that sounds silly, why would that be embarrassing? It kind of, feels a little bit like I'm just faking it. I'm just playing a game. And so it's been nice to step a bit more into it. And I got my doctorate over the summer. I graduated. So that was cool too. I don't really use the title unless I always tell people that's for advocates, attorneys, we got to shine. But it's nice to have that done because also I'm not having this, I think they call it a monkey on your back, right? Where you just keep thinking about something. And I was always thinking ever since I graduated my undergrad, I got to get this doctorate, so 2004, I was thinking that. So having it done, I do feel, in terms of the hierarchy of my needs and what I need to do for myself, that's definitely up there with I'm not going to say exactly self-actualization, but moving that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally applaud you for that too. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Especially at this stage in our career, because I finished up my program in 2004 also. So I feel like we're right along the same journey. I didn't realize that about you. But yeah, when I think about going, I think about it all the time. Should I have a doctorate? Would I feel more, I don't know, just legit if I had one? Or would I be potentially, I don't know, my credibility be better? Or, there are so many reasons why I would like to have it. And then I also think, how could I even fit that in to what I am doing with my life every day? So, I mean, props to you with building a business and getting your doctorate at the same time is I applaud you.
Oh, trust me, I wanted to give up like 100 times. I was ready. I was like, I'm gonna throw in the towel. I don't need this doctorate. But my son, I have two boys. One is an adult, he's 21, and the little one is 13. And one of the things, I don't know if I shared it last time, but I was, pregnant in my undergrad. So it was my second year of undergrad. I was pregnant. And, then I had this little boy and, the fire was under my feet, right? I had to perform. It's like, no more slacking off. You have to get this done. And he really is a big reason I went into education, funny enough, because I needed insurance for him. Because way back then, you couldn't stay on your parents' insurance until you were 26. So once I finished my college, I had to get insurance for him, which led me on a different path into teaching, because that was the quickest way I could get to insurance.
Right.
It wasn't in the plans. And so with him, I always say, okay, he was like the beginning of my career. He's the teaching part. And then my little one, he's the psychologist part. And so just kind of seeing them and seeing the transitions and seeing the belief they have in me, so that both of them in their own ways, let me know, like, they're really proud of me, and they're thankful for the lessons I've showed them. And, it's cool because my older one, we've been from living in a room all the way to like now, right? Where I have an office and, a business. And he's like, Mom, I saw you every day, all the struggles, all the times you sacrificed and kept moving. I'm so proud of you. And then my little one got me this pin 2 years ago, December, that said Dr. Mom. And so then I was like, oh, I got to finish this, right? Yeah, it was so cute. And so I was like, okay, once I have the doctorate, I'll sign, with this pin. So for me, even though, yes, I'm doing it for myself, like having my kids have that faith in me, it really gave me that final push I needed to just finish it up.
Yeah.
But I will say this for anyone listening that's interested, definitely, I think it's more manageable than you would guess. The hardest part really is the dissertation piece, because, you need to pick that topic and you're stuck with it. So I always tell people now, don't be a hero, pick the topic well.
Yeah.
Because if not, you're going to have to learn that whole topic in the process of, writing this dissertation. So definitely pick something, that if you're listening to this, pick something and understand, instead of like, going to some crazy, topic where you're going to have to like do your own research and maybe there's not much out there that you can pull from. But the program I went to was Alliance. It's asynchronous. So you get your assignments. I just had to be really on top of things. I didn't have a life for 2 years. And as a business owner, you wouldn't have a life for 2 years. But now that it's done, I can definitely say I'm glad to check that off my list.
Yeah. Yeah. You just said something that made it sound a little bit more potentially doable about like picking a topic that because I remember back in grad school when I had to pick a topic for my master's thesis, and at that point, you have interests, but you don't know a lot about pretty much anything. And so you're having to choose a topic to do a your big paper on, and it doesn't necessarily resonate for you, or you have to learn a lot about it. But now, I mean, there are topics where I'm like, I know a lot about this, so maybe it would be a little bit more doable.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, I picked reading, right? So my
that's what I would pick
dissertation. Too. Yeah, it was actually pretty cool because there's so much information, but I knew the big picture of reading. I knew the importance of RTI. I knew how, and I've shared with you guys that my son had this particular intervention that was based on precision teaching and direct instruction. So I knew all of that. But where I had to go back and learn was like, how did we get to this point? I listened to that podcast, Sold the Story, which got me into like a lot of research. And then, I had to become familiar with like the Reading League. I knew about the national panel on reading because I had to go through that in my teaching career. But I had to go back and what are the 5 pillars of reading? So I had to relearn. Now, if I could go back and talk to myself, I would have said, just do manifestation determination. You got like 5,000 resources on that. Just do that.
Yep. Yeah, that is, I give presentations now with one of the like founding board members. Can't remember. She's like she's in the Reading League. Like she helps put on the Reading League conference. So like she's next week I'm going to CASP. She's going to the Reading League conference. She's, when you get to open up for somebody, like she's kind of like opening up for the keynote speaker, Linnea Airy. So she's like, oh my God. So she's really excited about that. And then we're flying to New York and presenting together on science of reading aligned assessment for school psychologists at the New York Association of School Psychologists conference.
Oh, that is so awesome. Yeah. I'll have to send you, I'll send you a Padlet and then you guys can, I'm sure you have 5 million resources.
No.
Then there's even more resources. Yeah. You could pick reading and you could do, everybody picks a different angle. So even though reading is a covered topic, you could focus on how do you integrate appropriate considerations for the science of reading in psychoeducational assessments, and truly, how do you truly implement RTI? Because everybody is saying, I am doing RTI, and I'm like, look, giving that kid a choice if they're going to recess or staying inside, that's not RTI. Stop. That's not an intervention. Please stop. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh. I would love to read your dissertation too, honestly.
Okay, cool. I'll send it to you.
I would love that. I wouldn't normally say that, but I would love that because I mean, who wants to read your dissertation really? But like, I would love to read your dissertation because it's it's like what I'm really interested in. I mean, that's a huge interest for me. We're presenting at NASP also.
Oh, so cool.
Yeah. So
I'll have to come to that. I'm going to NASP, so I'll definitely sign up.
Great. Okay, listen, you know that once we become LEPs, we are suddenly under HIPAA. Did you even know that? So many LEPs I talk to don't. If you are anything like me, I had zero understanding of HIPAA from the provider standpoint when I first started. And think about this, as school psychs, we never had to worry about getting cases. They just landed on our desks and a lot more often than we wanted them to, right? But as LEPs, we have to generate leads to keep our business going. And one of the keys to building your practice is knowing where your leads are coming from, what your closing rate is, and tracking all of that to actually grow your business. These are just a couple of the things that I cover in my newest course, Practice Essentials. It is the foundation for setting up your private practice the right way. We also dive into managing your EHR, understanding private pay, setting up professional and HIPAA compliant email, your phone systems, and even things like super bills and invoicing, all the stuff that we aren't taught, but that you need to know in order to run a successful practice. And here's the best part. Right now, it is 25% off through the 22nd of October. Also, this is not just for California LEPs. This is applicable to literally any educational psychologist in private practice across the US. This course is going to save you so much time and so much hassle. It is everything I wish I had when I started. HIPAA, lead tracking, client management, all of it. It is all in Practice Essentials. So don't wait. Head over to empowerlep.com and grab it before the sale ends. I want to kind of ask you a little bit more about that feeling of as you're transitioning, like this year has been a year kind of stepping into your leadership. And that's really been what I've been working on too, like with my business coach. Turn that off. My business coach is Scott Robson, who I had on the podcast
cool.
a few months ago, and he is just so incredible. So we're really talking about like when you go, oh, I am this now, like I am it. I am, a week or two ago, I was in Idaho. I was there for 2 weeks. And while I was there, I interviewed 10 people for an admin role. I interviewed a clinical psychologist. I decided we were going to move our office. Wow. I coordinated like a paint consultant and the wall, and I had to order the wallpaper and the tile and coordinated all this stuff. And then my team was like FaceTiming me, going through the new space. And I was like, I am a business owner.
Yeah.
Like I am doing this. And it was that feeling kind of like what you're describing where you're like, whoa, like I am actually really doing this now. And how do I really, how do I want to show up as a leader? And really own that in a way that resonates with my values and making sure I'm bringing people on staff who also share the same values. How do I, all the things. So I want to hear about your experience with that and like building this team of, now you said 40, right? Like you have a team of 40, and, how you decide like, what, we're going to drop that contract, but now we're going to take on these others. I remember the last time you were on, you were talking about, how you get these contracts, you're paying these people, but you don't actually get paid for the contracts until later, right? Which is what happens when you're doing IEEs, right? So if that's like the whole thing that you're doing in your business, where you have these contracts and you are paying people and you're getting paid, what do they call it? Like in arrears or something, like you get paid after the fact and you have to come up with the funding beforehand, like I remember you talking about that. So yeah, please talk to me about all those things.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let me just go back and just congratulate you, because that's amazing that, you're like stepping into that role all the way. And like, it seems to me that what you're experiencing is this like fruition of like all of the, your seeds have been planted and you're starting to see sprouting. And it's so cool and like just incredible that, all that hard work you've put in is like, you're seeing it manifest before you. And I'm just so excited for you and happy for you and your team. And it's just a beautiful thing, especially, I know you have compassion, because at the end of the day, it's, we're there for the kids, right? Mm-hmm. Like these good quality assessments, going to bat for them, helping families to understand like this really crazy process that makes no sense when you're getting like thrown into it. So I applaud you. And I'm just so grateful that there's amazing people out there like you who are, doing this for their communities and, for your community of employees as well, because, that's the other thing that I really have noticed is that people are always telling us like, wow, we love your staff. They're very professional. They're very compassionate. They're very kind. And, at first I was just like, how do we find all these great people? And then one of our leads was like, Jessica, it's you. You've created that culture for us and you continue to perpetuate it. That's why it's like this. And I'm like, oh, really? Like, wow. So that's awesome. And I know you're creating a culture too. And I love to see it.
Thank you.
So,
it feels great. I just finished up right before we got on this podcast. I do like a monthly video update for my staff. I like highlight a team member and I just give them updates on what's going on. And like every time at the end, I'm like, I know I say this a million times, but this is literally my dream come true. And it's because of everybody who works for me. Like we are a solid like community resource. We are supporting like the kids and the families, just like you just said. And it is because of my staff that we can do this, so I'm just like, always like, I love you guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, that is awesome.
Thank you.
And yeah, absolutely. And, just keep it up. And we just all have to keep it up, because I do think, whether that this is fortunately or unfortunately, and, I hate to, I don't want to throw shade, but I definitely think there's a lack of quality out there right now, in terms of the product that we're producing. Now, I will say this, we in schools, if you're employed in a school, and you're listening to this, you have an impossible job. There's no way. There's absolutely no way. So for me, my criticism is not on the school psych. It's really on the system itself. Yep. There needs to be a revamping of this system and a reorganization. And I definitely think, I wish I had a magic wand and could like get everybody on the same page, because if we just restructured some of this money, restructured some of the way that people are trained, even if we just sat down and did, some boot camps for some of these leaders so they could understand, the obligations we have under IDEA, under California Ed Code, it could just be so much better. So I definitely think it's an impossible task, and we need to help our fellow colleagues out there, because they're not able to give that good quality that they could, because the system is stacked against them.
Mm-hmm.
So
100%.
Yeah. But going back to the whole thing about contracting and, just kind of where we're at and how we decide, essentially, first of all, we ended up kind of getting into one area physically, right? So we're in this location, this certain part of the Inland Empire. And so we end up like mostly having schools in like San Bernardino, the Redlands area, the Colton area, the Bloomington area. And so they're, geographically, they're near to one another. And then we had like this one straggler in LA County. That was the other direction. And quickly into that contract, I realized, oh, this is probably not a great idea, because anytime something went wrong over there, we need a sub, a child was having like a crisis, it took 45 minutes to get there.
Right.
And it just, wasn't a smart move in terms of like physically being able to be present. I think that if anybody was thinking that they wanted to expand in that way, you've got to have some planning. And what we really should have done is had somebody who could supervise over there. Mm-hmm. That could be the person that is attached to those students and their support staff. So that way, if there was a crisis, they're having support right away. Yeah. We got through the year, and that was good. And we fulfilled our contract and we kept good relationships. And this was so cool. We even got our staff who worked for us, because we ended up with just one left. One of the kids left and or moved. And then, so that staff was, not in it working for us anymore. And the second staff member who was with us, we were able to contact the other agency that the district contracts with and talk to them and get her an interview, help her put her resume together and get her interviewed through their company and keep her with the same kid.
Oh,
so that was like so awesome. Amazing. Yeah. Yeah. And that was just like a power of being able to, go to bat for your staff, network, and she's doing great. I texted her, how are you? How are things going? She's like, oh, amazing. I'm actually doing some in-home now. So that was pretty cool. So that opened us up for opportunity to have other contracts out, the other direction, which was where most of our, business already was. Right. So, the other thing you do is you kind of cold pitch to districts, but, honestly, if they don't know you, good luck, because they don't, it's like you're saying, trust me, I promise you, I can do this, but they don't know your work. I have a good reputation, but that was the area where we have contracts. That's where I did most of my work in the past several years.
Right.
So they know me, people know me, and you just have to kind of like always be on. I think that, where you're just kind of always, you're trying to find that balance between being sales pitchy, but, networking and marketing, because a lot of times you do have a solution to a problem that somebody has. And if you could just let them know that I've got the solution, you could potentially form this, really symbiotic relationship where everybody's benefiting. Yeah. And so then right now we do have some tough cases. Definitely we've inherited some cases where, that just wasn't working out with other staff or other companies. And so we're taking over kind of a few months into the year. And we're definitely singing for our supper in those cases, because you have these kids who have very high magnitude behaviors. And I'm not talking, hey, they have an attitude problem. I'm talking somebody's throwing desks 5 times in a 5-minute span. They're punching people. They're trying to jump staff. Just kind of things that almost sound like, is that really happening in a public school? It is. And that's, where I wanted to have some conversations today, if we could, just about behavior and some of the challenges we're seeing out there. I think, definitely, we have seen an increase in behavior. And, I was a teacher, like I said, 20 years ago. So I saw that back then too. We had behavior problems back then for sure. What I have observed, and this is just casually, I obviously don't, haven't done any research or collected any data to look at it, but casually what I've observed is that in the olden days, 20 years ago, you had kids that would, definitely get aggressive, verbal, yell, maybe throw something. But it seems to me that nowadays that threshold for how far a kid will go, it's expanded, right? And so, whereas in the past, maybe it would stop with knocking over a desk and, we move on. Currently, it's like I'm throwing 5 desks and I'm punching the teacher and I'm ripping everything off the wall and I'm breaking everything in sight. And, I wasn't just working with general education, everyday kind of students back in the day. I was working with a program called Success, which was a special education program in lieu of expulsion. So I was already, with the same sort of clientele as a teacher. And then even as a psychologist, I was in an ED K through 12 and community school, basically junior high through high school. So it's not like I could say, oh, well, I used to have a different clientele and, I can't really make the same comparison. No, I had the same kids way back in the day. Yeah. And I worked at schools for kids who have these sort of challenges. but it just seems to me that the willingness to take it to the next level has definitely increased, you know?
Why do you think that is? What do you think is going on?
Oh my gosh, I have so many theories.
Yeah.
You know, I think first and foremost in the behavior piece, we, you know, in America, we're just like such a punitive society. We want everybody to get in trouble, tickets, give them a fine, you know, lock them up. And you know, whatever people feel about that, you know, you can feel however you want. But what I'm saying is when it comes to kids, if we approach kids in that way, we lose an opportunity to teach them skills that they're missing. And a lot of times the problem is that they don't have the skills they need when they're coming into school. And then they start to form this really bad relationship with school. And you can see that in TK, pre-K, kindergarten, even first graders, where they're having this like hostile relationship with the school. But if you were to look back at when they first began school, they didn't come in with the prerequisite skills they would need to be able to meaningfully engage in school, being able to sit, being able to follow directions, accepting no, being able to share. And why do I think that is happening? Well, many reasons. But one, of course, you know, I'm going to say it's the fact that nobody's interacting with these kids. And, you know, I don't want to criticize everybody, so don't take it that way if you're listening. But what I mean to say is there obviously is a huge increase in child or children access to tablets, televisions, phones, things that don't require them to interact with other people. Then you throw in this access to short form video, which really is not giving them some of the same sort of skills that they might have gotten from a show like Mr. Rogers. Or even when my son was little, we used to watch Yo Gabba Gabba, and they were always teaching like a social skill on Yo Gabba Gabba. But now, you know, a lot of kids aren't watching age appropriate material. And then even if they start on a YouTube video with an age appropriate video, it starts going into something else with the next video and the next video and the next video. Before you know it, they're watching something that wasn't meant for them.
Right.
So, you know, there's not a lot of monitoring. And I think that these interactions that we have where you socialize, you put things aside, you have a conversation, you clue your kids into some of the social, you know, norms. I don't think that's happening in a lot of households nowadays.
Right. Because parents too are distracted by technology.
Yeah. And, you know, it's difficult because, you know, we don't want to blame it all on the parents. Like, that's not fair either. But at the same time, now more than ever is, I think, a really important point in history where it's going to be a sort of a, how do I say this? Like I want to say like a richness, or like you're going to be at an advantage if you have social skills.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. There's a name for that. What is that called? I think it's called like social capital, right? You're going to have like this social capital if you can interact, because even my kids, my older one has always been like a really like a friendly sort of guy and polite and all of that. And so he was a little bit more, I guess I would say, more outgoing than his average peers at that age of 13 or so, where he'd open doors and talk to people. He was just kind of like a friendly sort of person, right?
Yeah.
Whereas my little one, he's very shy, but he will still open the doors. He will still, you know, have a conversation politely. But the difference between them in terms of like that outgoingness is stark. And my older one would get a lot of compliments back in the day. Oh, you know, he's such a polite kid. You know, he's so nice. My little one now, I mean, just doing the simplest things, holding a door for an older lady, that's, you know, you should do that, right? Mm-hmm. Getting up, if a pregnant person walks by, you let her sit down. Man, people will just, that's a good kid right there. He is so polite. Oh my gosh, mom, you're raising him right. And it's like, thank you for the compliment, but isn't that what he should be doing? Right. And so you stand out now if you just have, you know, this politeness and this gentleness about you. And an understanding for other people, and you're able to read the room and know now is not the appropriate time to take it to the next level. Right.
Yeah. So, yeah. Having some self-control. Yeah. I really think that kids aren't getting to practice self-control a lot because they're literally just less active in their own lives. They are more passively observing. I mean, I could see the difference in people just, you know, as I'm interviewing people from different generations, I will say, and the difference in, and not like let me rephrase. I interviewed people from a lot of different generations, And there are differences, I think, naturally, and there are just differences within people, right? So like as me,
Right.
as like the tail end of Gen X, I'm like, I didn't grow up with technology, like I didn't have a cell phone until I was in college. We didn't really have internet, like we were still going, I was in grad school, we were going to the library. Like we couldn't even really look things up online yet, you know what I mean? So, when you, as a person who's interviewing people for different positions, some people will like send send you a nice email that that they wrote themselves. Other people, when you ask them a question on, I asked some questions on, and asked them to like talk to me on a video about how they would respond to certain things. And I could tell like some of them were just able to speak naturally about it, and others used AI to answer their questions and then read AI to answer their questions. Do you know what I mean? And I can tell. And like I think that there's like there hasn't been a lot of practice sometimes in being able to just, answer a question. And it's I think we're seeing a lot of that in schools, and a lot of parents, like this generation of parents who are, like people who are in their like 20s, early 30s now, grew up with cell phones, grew up with a lot more technology, and then they're having children and are struggling to know. And, those are a lot of the families that we see in the office. And it's a lot about, referring them to Dr. Becky Goodinside. Just as like, kids who have big feelings, and how do you as a parent, like, help to teach them those skills that they need and hold the space for them and, work through it with them together. I think I'm on a tangent now, but I know
exactly. I'm following you because, I think it goes back to, again, okay, so they're coming to school in this way. So what do we do at school to help, right? How do we remediate some of those skills, or teach skills that are missing, or reintroduce them to so much more attention for the good stuff they're doing, right? Because I think that's the other piece, is going back to the idea that we're really punitive. When we're punitive, we end up giving a lot of attention to behaviors that are not appropriate, behaviors we don't want to see. We give a lot of escape from tasks that kids need to get through. You've got to get through that discomfort in order to overcome, right? It's like if we go to the gym and we haven't been in a while, it's going to be uncomfortable. But if I give up after a couple of sets, well, I'm never going to get stronger and better. So it's the same thing with these kids. If, they don't like math and they rip up their math sheet and they knock over their desk, and you say, okay, that's it. You go home. You're going to get suspended. Well, guess what? You just gave them exactly what they wanted. The better thing to do is give them a break. Let's come back, pick up the desk. Here's a new math sheet. Let's do 5 problems instead of 30. And then we'll take a 10-minute break. We'll relax. And let's do 5 more. And I think people, they get upset about that. I've had teachers push back. Well, why are you going to give them such a break? I'm like, look, they're not doing it anyways. Yeah. The alternative would have been they're going home for 3 days suspended. Yeah. So trust me, it's a win to get a math worksheet done over the course of an hour instead of in 20 minutes. Yeah. And we have to shape that behavior, and we have to reinforce it. And I think that's the hardest thing, that people want to see. They want to see retribution. They want to see you pay for the things you did wrong, even if you're a kid. And, the hardest thing is to just move on. Yeah. Just move on from that thing they did. We can keep with the day. We don't need to make a mountain out of a molehill. And I know people are listening and probably like, well, throwing a desk is not a mountain out of a molehill. But for some kids it is, because you don't know how far that could go if you were to just keep engaging with it. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah. You think about like you were saying back at the beginning, it's an impossible job. And sometimes I really feel for teachers who have a kid with really challenging behaviors in their class, because, they're thinking like, oh my God, like I can't spend an hour
with this kid doing 5 minutes on, 10 minutes off and a break and having this 30 problems last an hour. They can't, they literally can't, and that's when it really helps to have someone who is trained to help a teacher. But there are teachers who aren't ever going to get that kind of help, but
oh, absolutely. Yeah.
The parents who do, or not parents, the teachers who do though, I'll bet that consultation piece is big with the teachers, because they start to have this perception of the kid and just want them gone. Like they would rather have them gone for,
guess what? That is a negative reinforcement.
Right.
You're just removing the aversive stimuli. In this case, the kid, not really the kid, but it's the behavior, right? So removing that, that reinforces the teacher. So, there's the whole thing. And when we do training with staff, we always tell them, hey, by the way, there's this situation where if you're giving a punishment, to someone who's doing something you don't want them to do, that actually starts to feel good. So you could simultaneously be reinforcing yourself while punishing someone else.
Right.
And so we have those conversations about how you have to self-monitor. But I think if I were to give advice to, school psychologists, BCBA, special education teachers, people who are, needing to consult with other people to provide like support or ideas, I would say one of the most important things that, these people can do right now is make your plans easy. Don't give this teacher some complex, crazy plan when she has 30 kids in the class and, is going to need to monitor everybody. You can't make a plan that she's going to, leave the classroom with the target student and, then she will give him a 3-hour, break somewhere else. Like it's not going to work, right? You have to make a very simple plan, make the data collection easy, make the reinforcement simple to provide. When you're picking reinforcement, pick things the kid actually, is reinforced by, because people will say, well, the reinforcer is not working. Well, guess what? By nature of being a reinforcer, if it's not working, that means it's not reinforcement. That's just, 101. So you got to pick something else. And it could be that it's just not working in that moment. That could be because guess what? There are these things in behavior, and I guess I say thing concepts, right? Where you have this concept known as a motivating operation. Okay, so a motivating operation is going to either make reinforcement stronger or weaker, or a punishment stronger or weaker. So, for example, right, if I were to try to give a kid, Oreos after lunchtime, hey, you just finished lunch and now I want you to do this work and your prize is going to be an Oreo if you do this work. Perhaps that's not going to be as much of a motivating reinforcement because they just ate lunch, because lunch is an abolishing operation for the effectiveness of the Oreo as a reinforcer. So contrast that with last year, we had these kids. We needed them to learn communication. We really wanted them to be able to ask for water, ask for a snack, because that's a really good skill to have, right?
Yep.
Just being able to ask. So we suggested to the teacher, once they come back from the playground, sit them down on that kidney table. And at that point, you can have water, you can have snacks, and have them manned for, water, water, please, snack, please. So that way they begin to connect, like water and snack. That's how you ask for it. That's how you get it. Because being outside at recess, in the hot sun, sweating and coming back in, that is an establishing operation for the effectiveness of the water and the snack as a reinforcer for asking.
Yeah.
So, and we don't take that into consideration, but it's at play all of the time. So you have to be thinking about the reinforcers you're giving this kid and whether or not they're actually going to be reinforcing. Maybe they do like that, but it's not the value of it isn't as strong in a certain part of the day or on a certain day. Or there's also tiers of reinforcers. So, maybe this is cool. I like that teddy bear, but you know what I really love? I really love the Switch. Okay, cool. Well, we're going to reserve that for something that you have to work really hard at. And I think that if we could help, our helping people in the schools, our LEPs who are out in private practice that are going to come help in the schools, help them understand that you have to have a basic understanding of these, behavior foundations. It would improve some of the plans we see out there. Because sometimes I see plans and they're super complex, or they're very reliant on feelings. And, the thing about that is that an FBA and a behavior intervention plan, by nature, they are ABA based. Whether or not people like that, they are rooted in ABA. That's why you have those functions that are identified. That's why if you go to training at Pent, that's what they're going to tell you at Pent. There's these 4 functions. They're going to tell you at Pent that it is an ABA-based, procedure that you're doing with a functional behavior analysis and a behavior intervention plan. Until that changes, this is the framework with which we have to work with. So when there's too much information about feelings, and you say, well, David acts like this when he feels angry. Okay, but that's not really what a BIP is for. We need to get deeper on that. It's to help us change the environment. So maybe he's feeling angry, but tell me what else is going on in the environment so we can fix that. Because the other thing I'll tell everyone who's listening is behavior intervention plans are really not for the kid. They are for the people around the kid to know what to do and how to interact.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's my take on that.
Yeah. So how it sounds like you take that to another level, and so how do people, where do you do trainings? How can people access you? How can districts access you? If people are hearing this and they're like, oh my God, I need to learn from Jessica. I need a refresher. I need to really get into this, because even right now I'm thinking about my, the interns that we supervise in a district are getting called in for a lot of behavior stuff, and they are not trained.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And they shouldn't be, because that's the other part that I want to say. If you're listening to this and you're feeling dang, why do that stuff? My plan is not good. What are you trying to say? Don't feel bad about it. And also don't be upset about it, because I was a professor too. I think maybe you were too. But our programs, they're a mile wide and an inch deep.
Right.
As a school psych and a program, you're learning everything. And that's why we are not specialists when we come out. When we come out, we're still going to find our niche, right, along the way. And I just want people to feel okay, that it's okay if you don't know behavior, even if you're a practicing psych already. Because I didn't. When I went to my BCBA coursework, I was like, whoa, this is so different than anything I understood before. So, I would say definitely in terms of, the need, it's huge. And especially for our younger folks in the field, our green people, because, the programs don't give you that. And that's not a criticism to the programs. That's just the fact. They're not behavior programs. They're school psychology programs. You got 500 things to learn and you only got 3 years. So for me, yes, if people are interested in getting training, we have a wonderful, wonderful training that I put on with a couple of the leads that I work with and our interns. And so it's cool because they actually get to hear from me. But I feel don't just hear from me. Hear from these guys who are actually the boots on the ground, doing all the work, and who are there day to day to implement the things that we're talking about. So here's the textbook. Here's the practice. Let's put it together and make some, good plans. So we offer it. We can come to districts. We can come to locations. I would love to be able to offer a service where we come in and set up classrooms and train everybody, and then partner with them, because I think that's the other piece that I see in school districts. And I've seen it ever since I was younger. It's a roll of the dice where people are placed. And so people get hired and, it's oh, I want you, I'm going to hire you. You're going to be the teacher for the behavior class. And, maybe there was 5 classes. There was a math class, there was a history class, there was a little guy, SDC, and this behavior class and something else. And you, Jana, are going to be the behavior teacher. Congratulations.
Yeah.
And you come in and there's no systems, there's no plan. There's no explanation of why you would need something like a point and level system. How do you tie, opportunities to this point and level system? They don't give you any training in terms of how do you reduce the behavior you don't want to see, increase the behavior you do want to see. And so you get thrown in it. And then teachers, they're so overwhelmed because nobody ever taught them. Or you hire a para and they're not specially trained. They just get, they just got bumped to that role.
Yeah.
And now you have a classroom of people who are trying their best, but, they don't have the resources they need to be successful. So that's why I'm like, I would love to come in, and with our team, we set up and then we partner and we let them shadow and then we give feedback. And I think that's the other piece, Jenna, in ABA. And, people hopefully are not mad at me that I'm a BCBA, but there's controversy around it. And I'm going to accept that because there's definitely been bad things that happen in the ABA field. And, there's also like bad BCBA. Let's be real. There's also bad teachers. There's also bad school sites. There's also bad cops. Like that's just a life. Right. Yeah. So, I'm not a bad BCBA. I'm compassionate and caring. And, I try to make sure that, all of our plans are super duper neurodiversity affirming. And, we're never trying to change the core of who a kid is. We're just trying to get them to be able to function, and be able to not use these maladaptive behaviors to get their needs met, switching it over to adaptive behaviors that could get them even more. Right. Yeah. So, hitting, kicking, spitting, that can only get you so far. But if you ask, if you're, polite, if you use your words or your functional communication device, you will get so much more and life will be better and you'll be happier as a kid. Yeah. So, I think, definitely, the thing I was going to say is that in school psych and education, let's say, right? Feedback is looked at as bad. If your principal said to you, and when I was a teacher, right? Like if the principal would have come to me and said, Jessica, I want to give you some feedback on how today went, my stomach would drop. I would be scared. I would be worried, like, how is this going to go? What's going to happen, right? But in our company and in ABA in general, feedback is to be expected. We build a culture that we're going to tell you, what went right, what kind of needs to be changed, how you can approach something differently. And guess what? That goes two ways. So our staff knows if you have to give me feedback about the way I approach something, please let me know. And we also have this culture of taking up for our mistakes. So if we do something sort of abruptly or kind of, rudely, we'll apologize later. Hey, you know what? I'm sorry. I was thinking about that. And I don't like the way I interacted earlier. I think I was a little bit too abrupt. I'm not going to do that again. And here's how I'm going to make it better. And we move forward. And it's sort of like cultivating like a relationship. But in education, we don't do that. Right. So I think that needs to change too, that kind of culture.
You're making me think. I was just talking with one of my colleagues yesterday, and she's having like parents come, like a parent will like email her that she had seen in the past. And I was like, oh, that's so awesome that, you're now, you've been here a while now, you now have parents like coming back and like giving you updates and like, asking you questions about what they should do next. Like, that's perfect because I don't want us to be one and done. I want parents to feel like we're a resource that they can continue to use. And she was like, I hate it. Every time I see like a parent has emailed me, my stomach drops and I think they're going to tell me that I did something wrong or I'm like that something I did was wrong, and I was like, oh, but I totally understand that. Like, I agree with you. Like feedback to us, it's like if someone has something to say, if someone comes back to say something, we just kind of automatically assume it's going to be negative.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I would say if I was looking at it from like a behavior analytic point of view, this is what I would say. I would say that as educators, we pair that feedback with punishment. So it's not because because the culture needs to change. Because the way the culture is that if a principal is talking to you about something or your boss calls you in, for the most part, it's negative. They're not really ever calling you in to have a good conversation with you about how good you're doing. And I'm so proud of you and love the way you're, doing these really awesome, things for the kids. It's not. If they're calling you in, it's to tell you what you're doing wrong, what needs to change, this attorney filed this or that. It's the bad news. Yeah. So that's a different or another simple tip. Pair yourself with reinforcement as a provider, right? So get people liking you. Come with good things. Bring good for a long time. And then if you have to do one bad news thing, it's not so bad.
Yeah. And that's a great tip for teachers too.
Yeah, for everybody, right? Because it's even for our own children.
Yeah.
In our relationship with our partners, with our, team. But there's actually a branch of ABA. It's called Organizational Behavior Management. And it's all about using like an ABA framework to help your employees to do better, which also helps the company to do better. And there's actually a guy, his name is Aubrey Daniels, Dr. Daniels, and he owns a consulting company. And he goes out to big companies like, Coca-Cola, and he gives them like, these are the things you can do. He's a BCBA. Here's how you can help, to fix the culture of your company. And everything that you have set up for those employees will also improve the company. So like we do a little of that. We try to build ourselves in that way, but also we have specific things like we do our a perfect attendance bonus. If you are in perfect attendance for the month, you just automatically get an extra $40. And sometimes we have perfect attendance weeks. So when I go to CAS, I told everybody already, that's a perfect attendance week because it's going to be hard, right? Because I'm going to be gone and, it's going to be harder to fill positions. So on that week, if whoever's has perfect attendance, they get a $40 for that week, which is in addition to your monthly perfect attendance bonus.
Mm-hmm.
So, just kind of building in things, right? Our staff meetings, we always have like good food. We build in 15, 20-minute breaks every hour. We're always talking about good topics. It's not just, dreary and boring. It's fun and we get interaction. So that's paired reinforcement, just coming to site visits. We don't just come for bad stuff. We come to say hi. We come to bring Starbucks. We come to get feedback.
Yeah.
We come to, randomly, hey, I got extra time today. I'll be here working with you guys today because I'm going to help you.
I love that. Can I ask you just say a little bit more about neurodiversity affirming practices and because I am starting to observe that there's this,
divide. Yes.
Divide. Yeah. And I don't necessarily think it has to be that way. And I'm not super involved in that conversation, but I would love to hear, from your BCBA perspective, just how you are incorporating neurodiversity affirming practices because I think that a lot of school psychologists, and I've interviewed some people on the podcast too, really want to, respect the individual, and also we need to build, these kids have to be respected for who they are individually, but also they are part of a system and we have to help them navigate that system effectively. Right. And the system is not just the school system. We're preparing these kids for life.
Yeah.
And so how do you kind of reconcile all that and how do you incorporate, because I think that's a big question is if we have to do, FBAs, that are ABA based, how do we also incorporate neurodiversity affirming practices?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, you have to tell yourself, right, as the practitioner, I'm not changing the core of who this person is. If your goal is to go in there and change this person so they don't look autistic or they don't look, like they have ADHD or whatever else they have going on, that's the wrong approach, right? So anything trying to target, things that are stressful, right? That would cause this individual to mask, which would be your eye contact, stopping stimming, not allowing them to have access to pacing the room or flapping their hands or, rocking back and forth or making a vocalization. If you're trying to stop that so that everybody around them isn't bothered, that's a problem, right? We need to adjust our expectations and we need to adjust those classrooms so that we teach everyone to accept that. That's just part of who this person is. And that's just what it is. And you don't need to stop them from being who they are. Right. So I think that when I'm talking to schools, teachers, goes my headphone. Can you hear me okay still?
Yep.
It was popping out and I was trying to pop it back in, but it fell.
No problem.
That we're definitely having those conversations up front. We're not going to target things that make this person who they are. And, I have done some training on neurodiversity. I partnered with a BCBA and she's also SLP. And we did a series. I want to say this is just after COVID. So we kind of been on it for a few years. And at that time, we had conversations about what the masking does to these kids, right? Because when a person has to mask, there's a huge increase in mental health problems that comes from that. Right. So not only the anxiety, but it's depression, right? Behind the scenes, like, this person's starting to become depressed because who they are is not acceptable to the world. And we don't want to do that, right? We want to teach them that they are accepted as who they are, and we're not going to target these things that make them who they are uniquely. When kids talk about like their special interests, I mean, I've seen so many people around them just kind of like shrug them off, or they're so weird, and that's not okay, right? Hey, we need to build in their special interest to what we do. We should be using that as part of the play we have with them when we're interacting, when we're teaching skills. It doesn't have to be so rigid and my way or the highway. No, let's sit down together. I love to do play with kids. Let's sit and have tea, right? Tea party, sandwich party, whatever, right? You're making kitchen. And guess what? In that play, you can get the kid to accept no. You can help them to follow directions, couple of steps. Like, I want tea. I want 2 scoops of sugar and 1 thing of milk. And it's an opportunity for us to have fun, and it doesn't have to be punitive. And I'm not needing to say, you can't, hum while you do it, or you have to look right at me while you make my tea. No, like, we just play, and you can do these things in a fun way. It doesn't have to be super duper punitive and rigid. And I think that's the idea that I have seen people have about ABA, that it's just this really rigid, like, there's a word I'm looking for, like, rigid, but also like, I want to say frigid, but that's not the word, but like cold sort of practice where it's just not fun. It's just drill and kill. No, it should not be like that. If you're sitting on a table for 8 hours a day, working on, direct trials, that's probably not a good thing for these kids. Yeah. I wouldn't do that. You can do that so many better ways and in less time, and it could be fun, and you can integrate the family, and you can integrate peers, and, you can do different things. So those are some suggestions I would say. But then also, right, being aware of the families and their perspective, because that's the other piece, right? You'll have families that need to get education on this, because for them, they will be requiring their child to mask, right? They will be requiring, certain interactions from their child, and it's just not possible. That's just not who they are. You're asking them to do these things, and that's just not going to be what they do. And you have to accept them. And I think giving the parents education too. So I think education is so important. Integrating play, not making it a drill and kill session, not making these kids dread what we do. And it's not about compliance, and it should not be about compliance, right? If our team, we're always looking for replacement skills. So it's not like, hey, no, don't grab that cup. It's, how can you get the cup? How can you ask for the cup? Okay, you could say, can I have the cup, please? You could show me a picture of the cup. You could, do a sign language to get the cup. If you can't communicate, we could have a system of communication that we could teach you, but some way, somehow they can get access to that cup in a more appropriate way. But it's not just about saying, no, you can't have this. No, don't do that. Right. Because that's the other problem, is like, there's so much of this compliance and just listen, just don't do anything. Don't be you. No, that's not how it needs to be. We need to give these kids skills, opportunities. And like you were saying earlier, definitely they have to be integrated into the school system. So I think sometimes when people start talking about things, it kind of gets me upset, because I'm like, you guys don't understand. Like, if a kid is grabbing you in the private parts and they're 7, we can't. If you tell me don't put that behavior in extinction, I want to know what we should do. And there are people out there, they're on Instagram, and they'll say, well, you need to help them regulate and to know when they can grab private parts and not. They can't. Newsflash, when they're 17 years old and they do that, it's going to be a problem. So it's better for us to tackle this problem when they're 7. And when I say put it on extinction, I don't mean be mean to the kid. I mean, we're just not, like, when they grab, we're just going to keep going about our day. We're going to get them on track with something else, reinforce them for that, and, get them totally like away from that grabbing behavior. So it's no longer giving them that reinforcement they want of attention. And we're going to give them even better attention for doing their work, for playing a game appropriately, for keeping hands to self. There's really no way that we could integrate grabbing private parts into the school day. It's just not going to work, but So sometimes when I look at these people, I'm like, you just don't know how it is. You think you know, but you haven't had these situations where kids do, extreme things. Like we have a kid right now who uses the restroom on the floor when he gets mad. Derobes, number 2 on the floor. There really is no replacement behavior for number 2 on the floor. I mean, the replacement behavior is we got to go to the bathroom, right? Mm-hmm. You got to use the restroom, but he does it like out of, it's like an attention seeking thing. Yeah. So, hey, we can have better belt buckles and loops on him so that he's not able to get disrobed so quickly. We can reinforce him for using the bathroom appropriately. We can up the attention for the positive things he's doing. But I really think that putting that behavior at extinction of like going number 2 on the floor is probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, I will argue this. My sister's a nurse at Loma Linda. And, she sees the gamut of what happens with people who get older and have disabilities and they need to get care. And, unfortunately, hospital systems, police officers, institutions, they're going to use extreme measures like strapping you to a bed, tasing you, medicating you if you're non-compliant. Okay. And I believe that it's so much more compassionate for us to do this work now when they're smaller, and we can build it up and we can help them to be adults that are functioning, because the reality is that people are not going to take the time to teach them a skill when they're 25 years old and on a rampage.
Right.
And I hate that we have to have that conversation, but we have to be honest with ourselves about what happens if we don't address this when these guys are little.
Yeah. Oh, I completely agree. I worked in post-secondary my last couple of years in public education, and I saw what happened to kids when they, their behaviors were too significant for the school district. And we had a really good behavioral staff and class, but still, there were still some, and then they had to go somewhere else, and like what was happening at those other places,
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. It really is. And I'm like, we've got to tackle it from the front end when they're really young. It's so much easier. They're so little and they're still happy, right? They still, when they're still innocent, and they're still so willing to be malleable and, to build those good bonds with adults. It's harder when a kid is 20, and they've had like nothing but bad experiences in the school system. And now you want to come in and change things, and it's going to be a hard road.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Dr. Lascano, how do people find you, and, how would they access you if they did want you to come and do training at their site? And do you do anything virtual, all the things?
Yeah, I can definitely do virtual. I can come in person. We can do series of trainings if people need it broken up. There's just a lot of options, and we can have those discussions as needed. Best way to find me is to probably go onto Instagram. I know that's funny, but it's like, just so accessible. So I am Practical School Psychology on Instagram. Also, I have a Facebook page for Strive ABC, so you can find me there. We have a website, striveabc.org, currently being rebuilt, but it's in the works. Then that website is there. My information, I can provide it to you, and you can put it on to the podcast link if that's okay.
I will.
People can always call me. Okay, cool. And those are the best ways.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This conversation was just really enlightening. I love hearing what you're doing with your business, but I also just love hearing so much about your practices, and how you're really instilling just evidence-based practices into your programs, into your trainings, and in just like a really broad, cohesive way. Like, I love that you are a school psychologist and a BCBA, you have just all the things. So thank you for talking to this community, because, we all are, I think it's hard for school psychologists who are not BCBAs, there's a lot of expectation on school psychologists in schools for behavior, and a lot of us don't feel super comfortable with it. So thank you for your help and support, and also for being available
Yeah, absolutely. 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 And thank you for having me, and let's keep it up. We should make this an annual thing.
I was just going to say, like, I absolutely will make it annual, or like just, every 3 quarters.
Awesome. All right, cool. Well, thank you so much, Jana.
Thanks, Jessica. Thank you for listening to the Empower LEP podcast. Episodes can be found at empowerlep.com. If you liked what you heard, please leave a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcast player. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, or if you have any questions for me, don't hesitate to connect. I would love to learn more. I can be found at jana@empowerlep.com.